A quiet street corner bathed in the cold glow of a single lamppost was home to a solitary figure, a homeless man named Joe. Joe, with the city's concrete as his bed and the stars as his ceiling, led a life marked by solitude. His world was painted in hues of hardship, the colors of struggle so vibrant beneath the pale moonlight. Every day was a battle against the biting cold, the gnawing hunger, and the crushing weight of loneliness. His mornings began with the first rays of the sun creeping over the city's skyline. The city awoke with him, its cacophony of sounds forming the soundtrack to his existence. He'd shuffle his way through the city's veins, each step a testament to his enduring spirit. His nights, however, were a different story. As darkness fell and the city slipped into a nocturnal hush, Joe would retreat to his corner, his sanctuary under the lamppost. This was his kingdom, his realm of isolation. But in the chilling silence of the night, he felt something else, a prickling sensation, like 1,000 tiny icicles running down his spine. It was as though the shadows whispered secrets to him, secrets that danced on the edge of his comprehension. He'd often catch a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision, a fleeting shape darting away just as he turned his gaze. A chill would sweep over him, a chill not born of the cold night air, but of something far more sinister. He'd rub his eyes, blaming the tricks of light, the fatigue, the hunger, but the feeling of unseen eyes on him never left. It lingered, a silent specter in the night. His world was one of solitude, but the shadows told a different tale. A tale of unseen entities, faceless beings that existed just beyond the veil of perception. They watched, they waited, they observed from the darkness, their intentions as obscure as their form. Little did Joe know he was never truly alone in the shadowy corners of the city. As the days turned into nights, Joe began to feel an eerie presence around him. The hustle and bustle of the city faded into a low hum, and a new symphony of sounds took over. Whispers danced on the wind, brushing past his ears, carrying words he could never quite catch. And in the stillness of the night, Joe could feel eyes on him, eyes he could never see, eyes that had no face. The world of the homeless man is a world of shadows, and in those shadows, Joe began to sense something more. Each rustle of the wind, each scurry of a rat seemed to carry more weight, seemed to be more than just the ordinary sounds of the city at night. He felt watched, followed, stalked. Every corner he turned, every alley he walked down, he could feel them, the faceless stalkers, always just out of sight. There were times when he would catch a glimpse of them out of the corner of his eye. Faceless figures lurking in the shadows, their forms fluid and shifting, like smoke caught in the moonlight. They were always there, always watching, their silent presence a constant reminder of his haunted existence. His nights became a dance of fear and anticipation. The anticipation of the unseen, the fear of what lurked just beyond his vision. His senses heightened, every sound magnified, every shadow a potential threat. His heart pounded in his chest, a relentless drum echoing the rhythm of his fear. Yet there was a strange comfort in the fear. The fear meant he was not alone. The fear meant that there was something else out there, something more than the cold, harsh reality of his life on the streets. Something otherworldly, something that moved in the shadows and whispered in the wind. The faceless beings were not just figments of his imagination. They were as real as the cold, hard ground he slept on. And in the chilling silence of the night, the faceless stalkers waited, their formless eyes fixed on Joe, their whispers carried on the wind. One night, the faceless beings decided to step out from the shadows. Suddenly, the world seemed to sink into an icy dread as the beings revealed themselves to Joe. They were tall and gaunt, their bodies almost skeletal. Where faces should have been, there was only an empty void, a blank canvas of obsidian black. They moved with an inhuman grace, their steps soundless against the cold, hard concrete. As they drew closer, the air around them seemed to grow colder, as if they were drawing the warmth out of everything they came into contact with. Each breath Joe took felt like inhaling shards of ice, and the chill seeped into his bones, making him shiver uncontrollably. Every instinct in Joe's body screamed at him to run, to get as far away from these creatures as possible. So he did. He ran, his worn-out shoes slapping against the pavement, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. But no matter how fast he ran, how many corners he turned, the faceless beings were always there, always just a step behind him. The world became a blur of streetlights and shadows as Joe tried to escape, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But the beings were relentless, their pursuit never wavering. The dread they instilled was like a living thing, a cold hand clutching at his heart. It was a fear so deep, so primal, that it threatened to consume him. Joe's mind was filled with questions. Who were these beings? What did they want from him? But the answers eluded him, lost in the terror of the chase. His only thought was survival, his only goal to escape from the faceless beings stalking him. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every noise a potential danger. Joe's world had become a nightmare, a chilling game of cat and mouse with the faceless beings as the predators and him as the prey. No matter where Joe ran, the faceless beings were always just a step behind. In the heart of his fear, Joe found an unexpected ally. In the midst of his terror, a beacon of hope emerged in the form of a kind-hearted stranger. This was no ordinary stranger, but someone who had walked the same path as Joe, someone who had felt the same chill run down their spine at the sight of the faceless beings. This stranger, let's call her Lucy, was not afraid. Instead, she exuded a calmness, a tranquility that seemed to stand against the very essence of these beings. She saw Joe's fear, his confusion, and chose to step in, to lend a helping hand to a fellow wanderer in this strange, unsettling world. Lucy had a story to tell, a truth to share. She had spent years studying the paranormal, the unexplained. She had delved into the mysteries of the world, and in her research she had come across these faceless beings. She had read about them, studied them, and most importantly, she had understood them. These beings, these faceless entities that had caused Joe so much fear and distress, were not the monsters he had imagined them to be. They were not malevolent, not creatures of the night out to harm the living. No, they were lost souls, spirits trapped in our world, unable to move on. They were reaching out to Joe not to harm him, but to seek his help. They were drawn to his loneliness, his solitude, seeing in him a kindred spirit. They were trying to communicate, to make a connection. Their appearance, though terrifying, was not a reflection of their nature, but rather a manifestation of their own fear, their own confusion. In the face of this revelation, Joe's fear began to recede, replaced by a burgeoning sense of understanding, of empathy. He was no longer the hunted, but the helper, the guide. The faceless beings were not the monsters Joe had believed them to be. With newfound understanding, Joe decided to confront his fears. And so, under the faint glow of a streetlight, our homeless hero found the courage to stand his ground. The faceless beings emerged from the shadows, their formless figures casting an eerie light on the pavement. A chill ran through Joe's spine, but he didn't budge. He didn't run. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum echoing through the silent night. Joe, once a simple man with simple needs, found himself in the role of a medium, a bridge between the living and the lost. These faceless beings weren't monsters, but restless souls, trapped and lost in our world. Joe was their beacon, their guide to find peace and transcend beyond the physical realm. Staring into the void where faces should have been, Joe spoke. His voice was shaky but firm. "I ain't much, but I'm all you've got. Let me help you find your way." The air around him grew cold, a silent acknowledgement from the faceless beings. His words hung in the air, a promise, an oath. The days turned into nights, and the nights into days. Joe, with his newfound purpose, dedicated himself to helping these lost souls. He comforted them, shared tales of his life, listened to their silent cries, and promised to help them find their way. His fear was replaced by a sense of duty, a sense of purpose. In time, one by one, the faceless beings began to disappear. Each departure was marked with a silent thank you, a gentle gust of wind, a light flicker. They were finding their peace, their final rest. And so, our story concludes with an unlikely hero. A homeless man named Joe, who was once stalked by the faceless beings, found himself guiding them instead. He discovered his purpose, his calling. He was no longer a homeless man, but a shepherd, guiding lost souls to their final destination. In the end, Joe was no longer stalked by the faceless beings, but guided by them. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.